It's time to start talking about reopening the church. Whether you're doing it at the beginning of May, middle of May, if you're looking at it in June, there is going to be discussions coming when you're going to have to figure out, when are we reopening the church? What is that going to look like? Is it going to be a phased in approach? Are we all coming in? What do we need to provide? And what do we need to do as far as transitioning people from online to in person? We're going to talk about that today. What's going on, guys? My name is Justin, one half or maybe even one third of Church Training Academy. Let me introduce what I like to call the face of Church Training Academy. Dave Curley. Welcome, Dave.
Hey, how y'all doing? Y'all excuse me for a sec. I'm ordering a new battery backup system here on on Amazon. So right before we start the show, I mean, literally, I went over there and I live streamed and I said, hey, come join us. We're going to start now. I'm going to go hit go. And I hit go. And all of a sudden, the battery backup that streaming machine is connected to goes boom and goes away. And so I'm like, great. Just what I need. It just started yelling and screaming. Anytime I turn it on, it's yelling and screaming at me. So yeah, I'm ordering a new backup system. So y'all excuse me for a minute.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think we've all had this issue. If you have a battery backup and it's not screaming at you, do you really have a battery backup then?
That's right.
Speaking of backup, we are glad to have my personal backup because Dave said, Justin, if anything ever happens to you, I have no idea what I would do with myself. Church Training Academy would be dead if you ever disappeared off the map. Direct words from Dave. We've got my backup, Bill Jones. Bill, say hello.
Hey guys, and by the way, I choose battery backups based upon how quiet and soft the chiming noise actually is.
That's funny. That's how I chose my wife.
It goes off every day, all day long.
What's going on? Let me give shout outs to the chat here. We got Tommy, Chris, of course, Jordan, Renewing Life Church, Luke, Alex, Tim, Thaddeus. Dude, I have never met a Thaddeus in real life. What's going on, man?
That's the second Thaddeus. I used to work with a Thaddeus. He was awesome.
My camera's looking a little dark. Let me brighten up my camera here real quick.
You look good on the stream.
On the stream, I look like a Oompa Loompa. I look purple almost. I think. Let me bring it up and see what that looks like. So today we're talking about reopening the church. And question of the day, has your leadership started discussions on reopening the church? And really what we're really talking about here with you guys being in the church media ministry, have they allowed you into that discussion? Not the fact that you have input on whether you should or shouldn't open the church, but what your input in as far as the transition and people staying at home and coming to church and a hybrid approach. We're going to talk about all that today because as we're going to talk about, reopening the church is not going to be a dream. It's not going to return to exactly what it was in February or early March before all this happened. There are going to be limitations in place based on your state, based on your county. Everyone's going to be different. And so what we're talking about here, not just in America, but also around the world, what we're talking about here is not what you should do, but what you need to know in your considerations and in your discussions to reopening the church, because all of this stuff is very important. Before we get started with what we have in the show notes, Dave and Bill, do y'all have any kind of preambles or anything that you want to throw out there right now just to consider as we start this conversation?
I think that one thing that we need to consider, this is a discussion that I've been having with our pastor and our executive staff, has been, we'd been live streaming and using social media and stuff, but not to the degree that we are. Whoops. Sorry about that. Not to the degree that we are now. And so when it was time for us to literally become a virtual church, we ramped up a whole lot of stuff. So now the question, a whole lot of programming, like daily programming, that if you try to do an analog with the real life programming and the virtual programming, how much of it did we create new things that we didn't have an analog for? And what have we supplemented and stuff? So the question is, how much of it do we bring with us as we, come back together and stuff? So I think personally, I think it's not an either or type of situation. It's a hybrid type approach. I think everybody should be thinking in those terms. That's my initial thought.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I would agree with Dave.
This is going to be a hybrid approach. Sorry, go ahead, Bill.
No, I was just going to say I'd agree with Dave, especially because, us being in Texas, Governor Abbott just released his notes yesterday, and we're going to be at most counties will be at a 25% capacity for even things like church. So I think initially, for the most part, it's just going to make you could do a live service actually in the building now because you can have 25% capacity. But that means a lot of your congregants are still going to be at home. And moving forward, there's going to be a lot of people that, like Dave said, Justin has said this before, they just don't want to risk it. So I think you just need to figure out the most efficient, practical ways. And at the end of the day, one of the things that we have to just remember is that it's our job to do our best effort to take the situation we have, whether it's COVID-19 or if we're a missionary halfway across the world in China where you can't even sing a song if you're a native to the country. And so out loud in public or anything like that. So you have to take your situation where you're at, what's going on, and just do your best effort, have your best foot forward, and trust the Holy Spirit to do the rest. And I think that's something we got to continue to remind ourselves and take some of the pressure off our shoulders that if we're making our best effort, which if you guys are here watching, you're really wanting to know and do the right things and investigate and see what's going on with the rest of the community around the world right now, then just rest at ease that you're doing the right thing, that you're making the effort, you're putting your best foot forward, and you're trusting God to fill in the gaps. That's my 2 cents.
I like it. Isn't that a phrase for something else? The God of the gaps or something? That's a phrase I've heard before somewhere. So let's talk about realities. And I wrote some notes here, and we can talk about all of them or not. We're going to try to make this as value packed, and we don't want to have to split this into 2 weeks because here in Texas, like Bill had said, we're already talking about reopening. I have a lot of clients messaging me about, reopening process. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about some realities here. First of all, your church is not going to immediately return to normalcy. There are going to be limitations, both government enforced and enforced by the families that attend your church, meaning, when the quarantine ends, my family is not immediately going to go outside and start grocery shopping without masks on, going to Chuck E. Cheese and all the other normal stuff that we did, jumping in the trampoline park. We're not going to go do that immediately when everything reopens. My family is still going to be cautious. Your family, your church's families are still going to be cautious as well. So cautiousness is going to play a huge part in that. And not only just the fact that you can open, but also your congregation's approach to the reopening. So you will have limitations. You may have government enforced limitations. And when I say government, I'm not talking about federal government. I'm talking about state government, city government, county government. My county just put Harris County in Houston just put in effect basically that you have to wear a mask now if you go out. If you're out shopping, if you're out working, even if you're behind plexiglass, even if whatever, you have to wear a mask. And so your county may have different rules as far as reopening to the public. I think Texas, right? We have maximum capacity rules, right? You're limited
right now,
to you're limited to 25%, something like that. So
yes.
That's going to bring up a question of what does church look like when it's operating at 25% capacity? That's a huge thing. And the last thing is it's going to take upwards of a year probably to return to normalcy. Talking about cautiousness, a lot of, depending on the culture, you may have a lot of older folk living with their kids. You may have a lot of kids living with their parents. There may be some people that are living with immunocompromised family members or at least visiting them every week. And so they will want to be cautious. And when you reopen, you cannot depend on them to come in person. You're going to lose a lot of volunteers. You're going to lose a lot of attendees. You're going to lose a lot of leadership because they are just not prepared to do that. And those are some tough discussions you're going to have. You cannot just plan on reopening everything and having a fully operated nursery, kids ministry, youth ministry with chaperones in every room and breakout classes. These are all things that you have to think about because not everyone is going to come. And, even if you can fit everyone, you're not going to hold everyone. Dave, Bill, y'all got any thoughts on just those realities that we're going to have to face?
I think that when this first started happening, The week before, we all basically had a everybody stay home order. What we were doing, that it's weird that it's like on Thursday or maybe it was Wednesday, something like that. My pastor and I, it was a regular Wednesday night at the church, and he said, "Hey, what we're going to do is we're going to extend our spring break programming, which is, just is modified, just only a couple of things happening on the during the week, normal things. The rest of the thing was, no kids activities or anything like that. And so we said we're going to extend that for the next couple of weeks. So we did an announcement, shot a video, got it ready, and then I was going to upload it. And he said, okay, that's changed. We're going to do only Sunday morning service. And so we made an announcement about that. And then a couple hours later, we're going to do only online service. So the idea was for us to stagger into it, where we start thinning it out a little bit and see how it goes. But that happened very quickly over the course of hours to a full lockdown. I think coming back, I think it's wise to try to stagger back in. So maybe you have a 25% capacity service in a normal service. However, understanding that 75% of your people or more are going to be watching it at home. So for me, the focus is to still do it like we're doing it as intentionally with a remote or a virtual audience first. Does that make sense? Not having the camera at the back of the room live streaming down from the balcony, looking down at just a handful of the tops of heads or the backs of heads, whereas you would normally be seeing an entire congregation. So the people that are there on that Sunday morning understand that there's going to be a camera right in front, and it's going to be shooting right at the pulpit, and there's going to be a girl standing there doing it. And the live audience, the people that are in the room with us, are going to be a part of the television experience. So we're going to do the television experience first versus a live event that we're videoing. Does that make sense? The thought shift, does that make sense?
Yes.
100%. Bill, you got anything to add?
Yeah, no, I think, like, I just want to reiterate that you guys are saying caution is going to be the story. I think throughout all this, pastors are going to want to open the doors quicker than they need to and should, and there's going to hopefully be more people making the decision than just one person in that regard, because you do have to think about everything that Justin just mentioned. Who's going to trust someone to take care of their kid right now? Mm-hmm. What children's ministry is really prepared? I mean, we're going to have hazmat suits, right. Give me your kid, and I'm like dressed head to toe and white.
We probably already do.
But I think it's going to be more of energy. I mean, let's just be honest, guys. Like, if we're really, pull back the full Wizard of Oz curtain here. The reality of it is that pastors are just like anybody else. They feed off the energy of the audience. You can tell in the way that your pastor who is giving an online devotional right now, the way they're preaching and teaching versus the way they would have to a full room is very different. Their personality is, for the most part, the same, but their level of energy and the way they're declaring things and saying things, it's just changed because they don't have people to sound off with them anymore, because they're in there by themselves looking at a camera. And so I know that they're missing that. I know my pastor's missing that. I know that probably your pastor's missing that too. So they're going to really want that back as soon as possible. And so I think probably the first stage is going to be, you're going to have 50 people in the room to help the pastor preach his message, if I'm just being honest and frank about it. And the same thing goes for the worship leader. If the worship leader comes back and is in there as well, I mean, you cannot take away the live energy that you get when you're leading worship. Me, as a former worship pastor and also as a worship leader at my church, it is really hard to lead worship to a camera. And so I think that's the thing that people are going to want more than anything is just the leaders wanting to have people with them, responding with them. It just changes the atmosphere. And you're going to see that. You're going to see that as more people come in. If you're having to stay home, you're going to see that. And, I'm just glad that most people probably have organizational tools in place right now, because you're really going to lean heavy on those things, because not everybody's going to be willing to come in, and you're going to have to recruit more people, and you're going to have bigger teams, and you're going to have to think outside the box. Because even when this thing first started, I was going to go in and record a worship set. And my wife goes, well, hey, isn't so-and-so playing? Yeah. Well, I just saw on Facebook that they had been traveling. I don't want you to go. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't think about that. And so you're going to have those discussions, and you're going to have those conversations for a while, I think. And I'm not saying for a while as in a month. You're going to have those discussions for a year, maybe a year and a half.
Yeah. I think
go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to say, I think until, and I know this is going to offend some people, but I really don't care. I think until the hysteria goes down, because I think there has been a lot of hysteria. There's been a lot of overblown about this thing. And I think when we step back and take a look at this a year or so from now, we're going to see that a lot of us, and we're already starting to see these numbers coming in, that a lot of us have already had this virus, and 99 point whatever percent of us have gone through it just fine. Maybe a little, feeling down for a couple of days or something, but not the. I mean, it wasn't the bring out your dead scene in Holy Grail, that the doomsayers were saying. So I think once the general population starts to look at this in a less emotional and reactive way, and in a more pragmatic and here's the reality of the situation, step back and look at it with clear eyes, I think that things will then move more normally, quote unquote, at the appropriate pace. I think the reality of the situation is that this is going to be ultimately no different than it is with flu season, or when the stomach bug is going around or something. We're already thinking like this. I have the stomach bug. I'm not going to go work in the nursery. I mean, the nursery workers think that, the school teachers are like, you know what? I had the flu. No one hugged me today. I've got a friend that has terminal brain cancer. So if I get drainage, I don't hug him. If I have a little bit of a head cold, and I got to go pick him up, I wipe down the inside of my car. I think people are already thinking in those terms, because we've been doing that for decades already. So I think right now everyone's kind of tentative, but I think once the official restrictions start to really lift, and I think things will get back to normal, and I think they will get back to normal. I do a lot, quote unquote, normal, a lot faster. I think until we have not a vaccine, because you don't really have vaccines for viruses, but we have equivalent of a flu shot, something that can kind of boost us a little bit and lessen the chances that we would be affected by that. I think we will see seasons where portions of our congregation go down, because we've got some elderly in there. We've got some people that are medically compromised. My friend that has cancer, he's gone through a lot of chemo and all that sort of stuff. So his immune system is just, it is, lacking. And it's going to be like that for the rest of his life. So he will police himself, and we'll see where, we have 600, for 2.5 months, and then we have 400 for a season, and then we go back up to 600, and then we go back down to 375, and then and it's going to ebb and flow like that, which is why I think it's not an either or. It's everybody needs to be live streaming, and everybody needs to have some online programming throughout the week that is supplementing. And it could be as simple as when we resume our normal men's Bible study on Monday night, that we're also Zooming it, so that if the 3 older gentlemen are unable to attend, they can still attend. So sitting at the table or sitting in the room or whatever will be the television with a laptop on it, and those 3 guys will be joining us as well. And you just build that into your system from this point forward. The thing that I worry about, if I'm going to worry about anything, is staffs that have already in the past couple of years, they're in this mode of what they do throughout their week, the different seasons of the church and camp. Summer gets crazy for the family pastor and the youth pastors and stuff, and then it eases them, but then it gets real heavy for the worship leaders, and the ebbs and flows of their thing. When they have now to add a few things, if I'm worried about anything, I don't want this to sound negative, but that laziness that could happen, most people are coming here, I'll just let this slide, and I don't want that to sound like negative laziness. I want it to sound like I'm doing so much already, something has to give. I'm going to let the online programming give, when the reality is now we'll have more instances where less people are physically available for periods of time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Not 1 or 2 who have gotten sick and are staying out during flu season, but 65 and older. That's 30 years worth of age in your church population that could be out for a month, and we're just going to let them just kind of slip. I don't think we should.
Yeah. So this is what we're going to kind of get into is what does that hybrid approach look like? Because too, Chris is dropping just massive knowledge bombs in the chat. So let me go through what Chris is saying here, because Chris, I actually have you down in our show notes because what you said was so good in Mastermind last week. churchtrainingacademy.com/join if you want to join those group coachings. But Chris made a point about capacity, max capacity, capacity limits, capacity cuts, and how that makes your church look. So remember that some organizations are just on the attack right now. And when I say some people in organizations, I'm talking about the ones that have an audience, either your local newspapers, blogs, influencers, whatever. People have certain things that they want to try to expose because that gets them clicks, that gets them information, that gets them attention, basically. So what you have to realize is even though your church can reopen, does that mean, this is a discussion you need to have as a church, does that mean that you should reopen? Because Justin Dean, church PR master, we've had him on the show, I think 2 times now. His church, he applauded his church because he's in Georgia. They're allowing reopenings now, but his church is not meeting yet because they believe for a couple reasons. That it's not worth the risk. The benefit does not outweigh the risk. The PR that comes with opening at less than appropriate capacity could blow back on them. So, and that gives a negative image to the church, and it gives a negative image of the kingdom and the gospel and all that. So rather than jump at the opportunity to meet in person, I'm assuming they believe it's less riskier and more beneficial to keep meeting online digitally. Because as Chris said in Mastermind, and he said it here, in the chat, the public perception is a very important thing about your church, and you don't want the news headline that your church is opening prematurely. Whether you agree with that or not, if your church opens and your community is not ready for things like that to be open, there could be a negative impact on your church, and that's going to hurt you both internally and externally. So if you're cruising along here, and I'm not saying everything's perfect, I'm not saying everything has to be perfect, but something that needs to be added to your discussion is it worth opening the church if we're only going to open at 10%, 25%, even 50% capacity? Is it worth having 75 people allowed in the church, only 20 people are going to come on a Sunday morning? We're still going to have a live stream going. We're not going to have kids ministry. We're going to have to spend man hours. And I always look at labor as a cost, because the labor you put into something like taking a check to the bank or wiping down your sanctuary, disinfecting all the countertops and everything, that is time away from ministry, even digital ministry. Labor has a cost. So is that going to be worth it? Is that going to be a benefit? Or are you just trying to return to normalcy because it's comfortable? This is a discussion you need to have. And I realize that's more of a leadership discussion than if you're watching this as a church media volunteer. But also, Chris pointed out here, he said the problem is we have created new habits, even if we realize that maybe this was overblown, or maybe we didn't have to stay quarantined this long. Whatever your beliefs are, and you can have your own belief. That's fine. We can disagree on that. That's okay. But whatever happens because of this, whether it was right or wrong or necessary or unnecessary, people have developed new habits. There are going to be, I believe, not to go too far off topic, I believe a lot of people are going to come out of this thing with a sugar addiction. They're going to come out of this thing with an increased porn addiction. They're going to come out of this thing and they think, oh, well, when we go back to work, I'm not so bored, so I'm not going to have to watch porn all the time, or I'm not going to have to eat sugary garbage all the time. No, your body has developed that habit, and it's going to be extremely hard to break. My habit that I'm going to have to break is sleeping 10 hours a day, because I have nothing to wake up for being working at home. I'm going to have a hard time waking up at 6:30 in the morning after this. I know that. That's going to be a habit that I have to break because I've just been sleeping later and later. And normally I don't sleep that much. I don't know about you guys, but I normally only sleep 6 to 7 hours naturally. I naturally wake up Saturday mornings at like 7 a.m. But now I'm waking up at like 9 or 10 every day. And I'm staying up till midnight. So I am sleeping like 8 to 9 hours a day. And it's going to be a hard habit to break. This laziness, this getting out is going to be a hard thing to break. And so we have to be in that mindset of, yeah, we really want people to come to church, but how can we assist them in that transition? We cannot sit there and demand, come to church. It's time. Right. The doors are open. You need to be here or you are a loser, right? You don't want that message to be communicated, even if unintentionally. And Chris also said, everyone needs to have online ministries, period. Remember, this is what the shut-ins have been experiencing for decades, essentially, right? So not to say live streaming is just for the shut-ins, but we need to create a space where we can take that hybrid approach. I want to go into next how we do that with live stream, social media, and your general online presence. But do y'all have anything you want to throw in there before we get into the specifics of what that approach looks like?
I think it's going to depend on the community that you're in. I think it's going to depend upon whether you're rural, urban, inner city, suburban, because everyone's going to react to it differently. It's going to depend on your state. It's going to depend on your political leanings.
Sure.
Because like my dad right now, who lives in Tennessee, is driving to people's driveways and they're rolling down the window and they're ministering and visiting to each other. He does a senior adult ministry at his church as a senior adult, and that's what he's literally doing, is driving around to people's driveways, letting them know they're coming by and sitting out the driveway and chatting 6 feet away. So, but then you're going to have people who are really going to want to, and the communities will support it, and they're going to really want to come back together. And they're going to have what Justin's saying, where the community's not going to be so much supportive of it. And I think it's really going to be it's going to be a decision per church. I think you'll see some trends in urban situations for sure, suburban situations, but remember, there's so much real estate out there that doesn't include those environments where you're going to have a lot of people meeting more quicker than you would in those other environments.
Well, and they also haven't had the issues.
Right.
You've got parts of. In fact, I was on the news last night. I was watching one of the, or it was this morning. They were talking about Pennsylvania. And they're having issues with too much restriction on when businesses could open. And the guy made the point: look, the people, on eastern Pennsylvania, we're right here next to, to the East Coast. We're an hour from New York. Of course, it's going to be much more issues over here. But I've got clients on the far opposite side of the state, and I've got counties that one person got sick enough to be in the hospital. Right. It's from one extreme to the other. I think one thing that everybody needs to understand and that everybody needs to focus on is focus on your community. Don't focus on 2 towns over. Don't focus on, up here in Dallas, Houston should do what's good for Houston. Okay. Arlington and Fort Worth should do what is good for Arlington, Mansfield, Fort Worth. Dallas should do what's good for Dallas, because there's different scenarios sitting over there. So First Baptist of Dallas may not open for a while. Okay. But, First Baptist Weatherford, with, 300 people may be able to open up a lot quicker and become, quote unquote, back to normal, quote unquote, a lot quicker. And everybody needs to pay attention to what's going on in their community and not worry about what's going on in the others. Just trust that the people in those communities are going to do what's best for those communities. Does that make sense? I don't need to worry about Louisiana unless I have a house in Louisiana, unless I'm living in Louisiana. We're going to do what's good for Texas. Louisiana's going to take care of themselves. And I also think one of the main reasons that a lot of us are really anxious to get back to church is because of the community, because of the people that we get to see. Our best friends are there. The people that we do life with, that's such a trite term now. The people that we have wrapped our social existence up in, the people that we have dinners with after church on Sunday, all that sort of stuff. So I think we can fix that lack of community without cramming a bunch of people into the building. I think it just takes a little more creativity. One of the things that one of the churches, a friend of ours up north did was they had a drive-by grab-and-go hot dog bar. So a handful of people got up there, started grilling hot dogs, making them, doing all this sort of stuff, getting them ready, just like the restaurants are doing, grab-and-go, right? But doing it on the church property so that people could come in, people can see each other, they can wave, they can roll down the windows, talk to each other for a minute. They can have that little bit of community. We can do more stuff like that because we're not cramming into the building. We can do some things outside, weather permitting, that will allow us to start regaining some of that sense of community, I think, than sitting in there shoulder to shoulder, like on a meatpacking line.
Yeah, and we have the tools to not replace it, but to make an alternative to mitigate the negatives of it. My family, talking to my mom on the phone is one thing, but the other day, we jumped on a Zoom call, and it feels much better. It feels like I visited her. In fact, my mom and I, we love playing games. We are a gaming family, board games, and we were really itching to play backgammon. And so after a lot of search, because he's on Android, I'm on iOS, after a lot of search, I found a backgammon app that works cross-platform. And we got on the phone and we played backgammon with each other. And afterwards, that sense of, oh, yes, I spent some time with someone. I feel better. I feel re-energized. And I'm an introvert, okay? So it's not a matter of just being an extrovert and needing social contact. It's, I miss my mom. I don't get to see her. I don't get to hug her. I don't get to, sit and look at her and talk to her. But Zoom and these other apps that we have to meet, these things, they help mitigate that lack of community. So community 100% is a sense of normalcy, but don't think that we have to return to normalcy as fast as possible, especially if we either break the law, break the local governance, or break what our congregation wants. Maybe you need to open up to your congregation. You've talked to some of them, and they say, we are not in a rush to meet, Pastor. Do not try to drag us to church, because guess what? That's going to harm your relationship with your sheep, with your congregation. You want to make sure that you keep this as local, as finite as possible. And that's why, really today, and I think we're doing a good job at it, we're not here to tell you what to do. We're here to tell you what to talk about. Okay, everyone is going to be different. So let's get into the actual nitty gritty here. So we're going to start the live stream because I think this is kind of the quickest and for us easiest, but you may have some questions too. First of all, your live stream, Dave, are we done live streaming once we return back to church?
Absolutely not. One of the things, Justin, we learned, and you and I have been saying it since day one. One of the things that we've learned is that it is an essential tool, and a lot of churches have and guys, you know who you are because a lot of you are watching this right now. You've been the ones that have been saying, "Oh well, until we can make it perfect, we're not going to do it." Or I know we should be live streaming, but and you've been making excuses. You've been making excuses, making excuses, making excuses. And in a lot of cases, you've like, we don't think it's important to do that. You now have learned how important it is to do that. And this goes back to one of my original assertions, is that every single ministry, organization, business, personal brand, across the board, we're media companies, whether we know it or not. So we are in a media-centric world, and we need to be taking advantage of the tools at our disposal. So a lot of you now have, you're fighting and screaming to get into live streaming. You are now forced into having to live stream or not communicate with your congregation for 6 weeks, and you've now learned the value of it. We need to continue using the value. Okay, we need to continue doing this because Chris keeps saying it, and he's so right. The way it's been for the last 6 weeks, this is how your shut-ins have been feeling. The people that are at the nursing home, the people that have been sick and have to be in bed for 6 weeks, this is what they feel, disconnected from the body. And so having a live stream, having video on demand, having a podcast, having social media interaction, having live streams where one of the ministers or somebody just goes live for a few minutes and just talks. How's everybody doing? Just communicating. All of that is important, and it needs to continue. And we need to, like I said earlier, it's not an either or. Okay, it's not. It's just not. The benefit of church, the church, the body of Christ, the people. Okay. The physicality of it is the greatest benefit, not the teaching, not the sermons, not the praise and worship. It is us coming together and being able to support each other physically, lay hands on each other, pray over each other, do all that, okay? That is the greatest benefit of the church because we encourage each other and can band together and go proclaim Christ and share the gospel, okay? In times when we can't physically do that, or portions of us, we have to keep people connected, and you do that through your live stream, whether someone's out sick or whether someone can't be in there during the winter because of the coronavirus or something. You have to keep it up, and it has to become a tool just as much as any other tool that you have in there. I mean, seriously, any other tool, just kind of like the giving thing. Oh, we don't want to do online giving. We don't want to, we want to pass the plate. Okay, if that's all you've ever relied on and you don't have any other mechanism for doing that or sending in a check or something like that, I'll bet your stewardship is really down over the last 6 weeks. I can tell you that the churches that have put those things in place or very quickly put those things in place and got them spun up within a week or two of this whole thing going are not in such a dire financial situation as some of the other churches who this is the way we've always done it, and there's we aren't going to change just because of some virus or something like that. All of these tools are here. They've been refined. Some of them have been really refined over the last 6 weeks. We have to take advantage of them and keep using them because what's next? What's going to be the next thing? Probably a zombie apocalypse. That's probably the next thing coming down the road. Wouldn't you say, Bill?
Yes, the zombie apocalypse is coming.
It's Walking Dead, people.
And I just want to reiterate with what Dave's saying that, you have to think about the fact that everyone's got a media device in their pocket for the most part. Mm-hmm. And you need to take advantage of that from a giving standpoint, from a content standpoint, whether it's audio, video,
chat.
You got time, produce the content. Mm-hmm. And, find out what works for you. Shop around. I know we've got some recommendations on the right kinds of services and what's out there, but there are plenty of platforms to do this content on from a variety of price points. So I would say affordability is not the issue any longer, whereas that was in the past. It's not the issue now. It's really just down to you training your congregation on how to use new tools. And you know what? It's the same thing with changing the carpet. You're going to have some who like it, some who don't. Mm-hmm. But eventually, everyone gets on board, and eventually everyone gets beyond the barriers. And so, yes, online giving, yes, online streaming live, yes, recorded videos they can watch later. Yes, look into, is there a way to do this through an app? Because there are app services out there that are very affordable. How can you get the gospel in their pocket? Because that's where they're going to be the majority of the time. Even my mother-in-law, who's in her 70s, what does she spend most of her time on now that she has an iPhone? Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she's not calling, she's commenting.
Right.
And so that just goes to show you it's not age, it's just mentality.
Right.
So change the mentality.
Sharon Scott has a good question in there, and I'm also calling her out because she says, Dave, you're making good sense. So that helps too, Sharon. She said, she asks, how do you feel about having corporate Sunday morning service and then have Bible study and any other meetings, say on Zoom? Back earlier in the show, I think that's something that basically needs to happen from this point forward. Having especially early on, I think we need to be producing our live stream and all that for a remote audience, for a virtual audience, for a television audience. And let the people that are live be a part of that, as opposed to having a live event that we're putting a camera on and catching, because we're not completely back to a live event that we're going to stream. We are going to stream our worship service, and we're going to stream our preaching time. And there are some people in the room who can join us now. Okay, it's produce your TV show, quote unquote. And there's also people there. You now have a live studio audience, so to speak, and it's small for right now. And then over time it will grow, and over time it will grow, and eventually it'll be, 80 or 90% of what it was, and things can come back to normal a little bit. But you need to keep that other mentality in, because there is going to be seasons where a quarter of them, because of their age or because of their health, are going to be out for a while, and you can't not necessarily do things the way you used to do them. Okay, so that's my thought there. And I think basically from this point forward, once we start getting back together and having women's Bible study and men's Bible study and youth and stuff like that, we add Zoom to that. Okay, and you can do it different ways. You can have an iPad, you can have a computer, and you can, a lot of churches, we've got 2 or 3 of these TVs, 50-inch TVs on rolling carts. The youth have one, the kids have one and stuff. You roll that into the room and you make that a part of what you're doing. Up until this point, a lot of us have been using them to have the PowerPoint on for doing our slides and stuff. Just incorporate all that into a Zoom conference and have someone who's going to be in charge of that. Someone who's part of that group and is normally there, could be the facilitator, who's doing that, because you are going to have people that there may be 3 or 4 of them that need to be remote for the next several weeks. So this is now being added to what you do. Make it a regular part of it, and it just becomes second nature.
Yeah, and remember that this is not, again, just I'm sure, Sharon, you're not misunderstanding this, but for anyone that might, this is not an either or. This is not, we're going to do church service corporate in person, and then we'll Zoom the Bible study. You should live stream or Zoom the corporate worship as well. And I believe most congregations, if you have been recording your sermon at the sanctuary and you've got the camera on stage, I am sure 90% of people in the congregation, or 90% of congregations out there, will not mind the camera staying on stage. So there's a camera in pastor's face. Well, that's okay, right? I'll move. I'll sit somewhere else. We've got 20 of us in this building that seats 100. But we know that camera is basically 50 people watching the sermon. They're going to be okay if you can't move your camera in the back. There's a computer back there. You got to have your iPhone on a Gorilla Pod on the pulpit. That's okay. Don't neglect it. Don't get rid of it just because you're preaching in person now to 20 people. I am sure you're going to still have more people watching remotely. In fact, if it's not the case, if you reopen your church and you have more people in service than watching service online, please tell me, because I right now do not believe that that is going to be the case. You are going to have more people streaming than you do on in service your first couple weeks. And if that's not the case, please prove me wrong, because I want the data. But just because you start, Chris said this in the chat, just because you didn't start during the beginning of this craziness doesn't mean you can't start now. You can make a simple investment and get some webcams in your Bible study rooms. If you're going to meet in Bible study rooms, you can get a camera for your pulpit. You can just get a GorillaPod. It's $15. Put it on your pulpit. If your pastor's just been doing his iPhone at home and now he's going to go preach in service, bring that iPhone, put it on a stand, and let him see that and be involved with the people online. This is not an either or. We want you to do both. That's the whole point, is this is a hybrid approach. You're going to have elevated, I'm reading my notes here, you're going to have elevated numbers still for your live stream. If you had 7 people live streaming before all this started, guess what? When you reopen, you're probably going to have more than 7. Okay, you got 100 right now streaming. When you reopen, you're probably still going to have close to 100 or 50 or 60. Do not think it's going to go back down to 7. If you've been taking care of your flock online, they will continue to come to you. Okay, and so don't forget about the people online. You're going to have to figure out too, how do they fit in attendance? Okay, do you count them? Do you count one person as a view? Do you count one viewer as a family? You know it's a family watching, so that's 3 people. You're going to have to figure that out. And we can help you with that. You can post in the Church Media Hacks group. You can meet with me and Dave daily in our private Facebook group for CTA Insiders. But this is something you're going to have to discuss as a church, and we want to help you and give you some input. But it is at least for the next year.
Yourself 6 weeks or 6 months down the road, if and when something else happens, you'll be like, oh, I really wish we'd have kept up with all this sort of stuff. Don't do that.
100%. And you may have to invest.
Forward. This is good.
Yeah, you may have to raise your investment. For example, my daughter's totally different world. My daughter has Zoom classes through her school, and then she has Zoom classes through her dance academy. Okay, the school is on a free Zoom account. The classes are 40 minutes every day. The teacher gets cut off because the Zoom's over. That's it. We're done. We're done. Right. Her dance class her dance academy has invested in Zoom. So not only does she have a Zoom class, they actually use meeting rooms in Zoom. So it's not just the teacher's Zoom. We're going into Zoom Room F, which is her normal dance class, Room F. There is no pause. The teacher has the ability to do a lot of advanced stuff in Zoom, to highlight kids, to shut off their audio, to hear their tap because they're practicing tap, to highlight them, to ask questions, to get them talking to each other. The meeting number, and it's all advanced, and she's got a moderator that will watch the waiting room and make sure that only kids are coming in. So the teacher can focus on teaching, and the moderator can let the kids in, and she doesn't have to stop. And there's a lot of advanced things you can do in Zoom. And let me tell you, our Dance Academy is a much more pleasurable education experience for our daughter and for us as parents than her class that's using the free account. And if you're thinking, boy, Zoom for Bible studies, I got to make meetings for everyone, I got to give the login to everyone. No, raise your investment, get the enterprise Zoom, create meeting rooms, create user accounts, create moderators. It sounds like a lot of work, and it is up front. But after that, everything just kind of goes, right? Your men's meeting comes up. You don't got to go up to the church. Fred, who runs the who runs the men's meeting, knows I'm going to boot up the computer. I'm going to open up Zoom. I'm going to sign into room 205, and I'm going to let these people in, and we're going to rock and roll. And the password is this or whatever. Like, there is advanced stuff you can do to make your life easier. Don't think that it has to stay as complicated or that it's going to get more complicated. There are things to invest in, and it can get a lot easier. Let's move on because we only got about 10 more minutes left here.
Real fast.
Go ahead.
Real fast. Angela Harmon has a question. She said, should we Zoom our morning service if we are already on Facebook and YouTube? Here's the deal. You guys have to remember, and I've actually got a list of questions like this. I'm going to do a YouTube video for you guys on several of these types of questions. You have to remember that Zoom is video conferencing software, okay? It is not live streaming software. You can stream the Zoom conference, but think of it like a telephone versus a stereo system or a CD. So if Justin wants me to sing him a song or wants to hear a song that Bill and I wrote, and we're going to play it, and we've got our amps and we've got our keyboard and drums and all that sort of stuff, but he wants to hear it on the telephone, he's going to get mediocre to crappy sounding audio quality because he's listening over a telephone.
It sounds like this when you talk over a telephone.
But if I sent him a CD or sent him an MP3 or something like that, he would get the full fidelity. That is the same thing with Zoom. Zoom is designed for the human voice, okay? So it's got all kinds of noise canceling out technology and stuff built into it so that background noise, dogs barking, air conditioner hum, all a car outside backing up going beep beep beep, stuff like that, those things get filtered out. That also happens to be where guitars are and pianos and flutes and clarinets and all that sort of stuff. So you're not going to get high fidelity audio going through Zoom. Zoom is for Bible studies. Zoom, which is a handful of people sitting around and talking and asking questions with a facilitator, reading scripture and doing things like that. It is not for praise and worship time. That is what a live stream is for. So you have the cameras, you got your mixer, you've got great audio coming into a soundboard that you are then piping out through a 128K audio stream for CD quality audio and HD video going out so that people can watch it on their phone and do stuff like that. It's for consuming the stuff that's being created. The participatory stuff is what is Zoom or Google Meet or Skype or any of those other sort of things are. So just the right tool for the right thing, okay? You wouldn't have you wouldn't have a panel discussion or a group discussion in the middle of your worship service where Bob over there is having input and this person. The only thing you're going to hear in a worship service is a bunch of amens, right? So you wouldn't Zoom that. You wouldn't have a discussion time in a worship service, so don't use Zoom. Does that make sense? I hope so. Go ahead.
And I had one side note on that, guys. Make sure we're making everything accessible for everyone.
Yeah.
So turn on your closed captioning on Zoom. You can Google it. There's a quick how-to that Zoom puts out there for turning on closed captioning. And also make closed captioning automatic on your live streams so that people don't have to figure out how to turn the text on if they have auditory issues.
Right.
So always make sure that you're doing your best to make sure your content is accessible for everybody. It can be more accessible now than ever before, probably.
Yeah, and there's a lot of...
You don't have to even worry about having a live interpreter because you can just turn on closed captioning.
Yep.
Yes, and if you do have a live sign person, make sure they're by the pulpit because we have really enjoyed watching those people during our government announcements.
Yes,
they've really come into the spotlight. Real quick, we got 7 minutes here before we got to take off. Let's talk about social media. There's social media and online presence to discuss. Maybe I'll do the online presence part in the group, but let's talk about social media right now.
Okay.
We've taken to, in many churches in our Church Media Hacks group, my clients, Dave's clients, our insiders, Tommy put in the chat what your church is doing. A lot of churches have taken to what I call extracurricular activities inside their social media, meaning they're not just posting, come to church on Sunday. Here's our Sunday message. Don't forget to sign up for the women's event. What we've seen a lot of churches do now is Monday devotionals with Pastor Tom, and then Wednesday kids time with Dora, and they will, not Dora the Explorer, Dora Minister Dora.
Right.
That was a bad name to choose. But kids time where maybe, she will open the Bible or read a storybook or send a coloring page, and you guys can just hop on Zoom and just color together. I mean, just having the kids with parents present, having the kids being able to see their classmates on Zoom is a wonderful thing. My daughter's face lights up when her friends come on Zoom during her classes that she hasn't seen now in almost 2 months. So just these little kids activities that are going on through the middle of the week, do not stop those. Do not stop. Morning breakfast devotional with Pastor Tom on Tuesdays. Do not stop Friday Q&As. Just because you're meeting now in person does not mean that stuff has to end. Continue your extracurriculars. If you're having a Zoom Bible study that's Wednesday nights, that normally is your Sunday morning Bible study, don't stop that. Continue a Wednesday Zoom Bible study because, again, like Chris said earlier in the chat, people are developing habits. And if people are showing up for your Wednesday night Bible study on Zoom, they are not going to automatically come to Sunday morning church.
Why would you stop? Why would you cut that off? Why would you say, hey, we've been doing this and it's been working and we've been ministering to you. We better stop. I mean, that's stupid.
Yeah. Well, I mean It is a misunderstanding of how the world works, because again,
Right.
as church volunteers, we are expected and we expect ourselves to be at church on Sunday. As a normal congregant, that is not the case, right? Church is something you do maybe twice a month. All right. So if you do get people connected on a Wednesday night through Zoom, do not stop that, right? You don't have much to compete with on Wednesday nights, except for maybe yourself. But that's okay. So if you're doing extracurriculars, if you're doing a kids, let's color together time at 10 o'clock on Monday mornings, don't stop that. Keep that up. Now, if it does take a dip after a few weeks, you realize that most of the people watching are coming on Sunday, then you can stop. Then you can phase it out.
Yeah, but don't kill it yourself.
Don't kill it yourself. That's a really good way to put it, Dave. And just keep posting and responding every day. I love seeing pastors say, wow, people are sending me messages. I'm an admin on like 10 different church accounts and some business accounts that I get dings on my phone every time they get a message. I should really turn that off. But the dings have gone way through the roof since this all started. And pastors, I've been having to tell them, clients, hey, answer this message because people are messaging and they're responding. Don't turn that off. Don't switch that mindset off when this all starts. Okay.
Right.
You got to just keep the connection open. And someone, I'm sorry, it was a while ago. I wrote it down, but I didn't write down who asked it. They wanted to know about teaching elderly to use social media. It's not something that comes secondhand to them. It's teaching them a new thing. Again, I don't have a great solution for this other than record yourself using it, and then maybe they can follow along with it. Dave or Bill, maybe you have an idea, but that's not an excuse for them not to get involved. It may be for them, but it's not an excuse for you to not try. So I like to, anytime we make website changes, I like to record a video. Hey, what's going on? Bill and Ted's Excellent Church. We just added the sermon engine to the website. Here's how you use it. Here's how you search. Watch this video alongside and play with it yourself. And people will watch that if you make it easy. Don't put it on your website. Put it on YouTube because it'll just play and it's good. There's one less thing to go wrong.
YouTube's the lowest common denominator.
Exactly. So, boy, we keep hearing that phrase, don't we? Lowest common denominator. Make it really easy to teach them. And if you have to, if you can, and if it's safe, go visit their house. You drive by, in the cars. Hey, open up your phone. Okay, yeah, it looks like you got to click on this. And there you go. Add that to your homepage. And now you can watch us live. And that will make their day. And it's another way to have community. And it's another way to get involved with them. So don't think that you can just write an article and they'll get it. Make it accessible to them the way that you can best teach and the way that they can best learn. So I hope that helps, getting the elderly able to use social media a little bit better. And you'll be surprised. Some of them will surprise you. I didn't know that my Nana could text, but boy, can she text, right? So I've just learned that. And hey, that's pretty cool. I didn't know she could do that. So they may surprise you with what they know how to do. We'll do online presence another time, maybe in the Church Media Hacks group. So go join the Church Media Hacks group. churchmediahacks.com will take you there, answer the questions, and you can get invited to the group. Any closing arguments?
No, I think you're right. I think they're just as an aside, you guys, there's a go to getloom.com. Loom is a really easy to use like screen recording app, so you can show them how to go, on their laptop or whatever, how to go to Facebook and use it. You can also get like little screen recording apps for your iPhone or for your Android phone, and something as simple as that. We talk about the lowest common denominator. You don't have to have a Google account to watch something on YouTube. You just click a link and it starts playing. So use YouTube, and then also even the it's going to be rare for. I mean, they're going to be in their 90s if they don't have email. You know what I'm saying? My grandmother's 98. She doesn't have email. Actually, she does. She just doesn't know it because she has a Time Warner Spectrum account. You see what I'm saying? So there's a handful of people maybe in your church that don't have email, but that's, again, kind of the lowest common denominator, or a text where you can send out a text or send an email that says, here is how you go to the church's Facebook page, and you just do a little walkthrough. Get on your laptop, get on your phone, do something like that. So it's really easy. Go to I think it's GetLoom. Isn't that right? GetLoom.com?
I think it's UseLoom.
UseLoom? Do a search for Loom and screen recording. You'll find it. It's a great little free tool.
Bill, you got anything to close on?
I would just say, if you keep your Zoom meetings open and keep using Zoom for your Bible studies, I think what you might find is people accessing the content when they can't be there as well, when things do get a little bit more normal and they have to go take their kid to their whatever lesson. But they can still listen to the Zoom call, be a part of the Bible study while they're driving in the car or whatever. And so it's just about giving people access to content in varieties of scenarios and situations, and don't just think that just because things have died down a little bit that it won't be used, because I guarantee you, as my wife was on a Zoom call yesterday in the car as we were driving our daughter to her horse lesson, people are going to use it. So make it available.
And I will say that this gives you guys the opportunity, because Zoom lets you record, and you can record locally, like on your own computer, so you don't have to worry about like running out of space or anything. But some Bible studies are intensely personal, very small groups, where someone says, I've been addicted to porn for 20 years or whatever. That sort of stuff you wouldn't obviously want to be, celebrating recovery. You wouldn't want that to be public stuff. But there's other ones, like a family ministry Bible study. We have our family roundtable is what we call it. Something like that can be consumed by people that are not normally there on Wednesday night because they work third shift or something like that. So Zoom lets you record. So look at this. Your church's ministry can have multiple podcasts, multiple playlists and avenues on YouTube and on Facebook stuff with this content for people who can't make it Wednesday night, can come back and do it after. So that's a whole nother thing that we're going to do some walkthroughs and do some videos on to show you guys how to do that, how to amplify that. So you don't just have the regular Sunday morning podcast, but now you've got, oh my gosh, a media network. What have I been saying for the last 3 years, Justin? Your media company. Look, you're a media company. And here's how you are.
I put this in the Media Hacks group and allow me to close with this. There are two kinds of churches right now. And when I say right now, more a few weeks ago, but right now there are two kinds of churches. The churches that are doing well during this time because they have the infrastructure, they have prepared for this, whether they knew it or not. They probably didn't. No one went live streaming 2 years ago to say, we're going to be ready for the pandemic of 2020. But those churches easily switched over to live streaming only and just said, all we have to do is just start notifying people of when the live stream is or when we're going to do it or when we're going to record it. Then there's the churches that are struggling to catch up because they were not prepared. They said, no, we got people coming to church. We don't need a live stream. That's not an issue for us. And then now it is an issue for us. We have seen that. And God forbid you experienced that where you had to scramble. I mean, this stuff happened within a week. There was no preparation time. You had to scramble. How are we going to do church remotely? Notice I don't say church online. I specifically use the word church remotely because the online does not replace the community, but we do have to do it remotely. I can expand on that later, but there is another time coming where you're going to have to prepare, and that is the transition time. What are you doing right now to set yourself up for success when you start transitioning into actual real life church? Someone in the chat raised the question, what do we do if they show up without a face mask? And face masks are required for public gatherings. You have to know, can you provide one? Does it have to be a face mask? Can it be a bandana? Can it be a scarf? What about hand sanitizing stations? We already talked about sanitizing your surfaces. There's going to be a lot of stuff that you need to figure out, need to ask, and you need to prepare now, whether you're opening up in August or whether you're opening up next week. There are questions that you have to ask now. Will you set yourself up for success? These are the questions you have to start answering now. Don't think that you're going to figure it out later because that's what you did and you took a major hit because you didn't have online giving, because you didn't have streaming, because you didn't have software, maybe because you didn't even have hardware. And you're having to figure all this out right now as it's happening. Don't fly by the seat of your pants. Get prepared now for the transition, for the reopen. Figure that you ask those questions now, and we're here to help you. In the Church Media Hacks Group, CTA Insiders Program, we're here to help you. So take everything that you've learned today, consider it, digest it, go implement it, execute it, and go change lives.